Okay, hi everyone. It's Emmett with Longborough Limousine. I hope you guys are having a good day. I sure am. Um, Now, if you guys saw this video and thought the first thing that came to your mind was the limousine car, you're wrong. Um, this is about the limousine cattle, and this video is going to be about teaching you guys about the breed history, more specifically. So, I'm going to start with early breed history. So about 20,000 years ago is when there were cave drawings that were found in France, in some caves in France, and that was about the earliest time that the Limousin cattle breed was recognized, really. Um, and so Limousin cattle, they're native to the parts of south central part of France in the regions of Limousin and La Marche. So I drew this, I tried to draw this picture of France. Okay, you got Limousin here and La Marche here. The Limousin cattle were about in this area right here. That's where they're native to. Now, this area, it was really harsh. It was really rocky kind of ground. It was a harsh climate. If you guys have ever been to Kansas, kind of the central part of Kansas where you have all the rocks and stuff, that's about how it was. The climate was very hot in the summers, very cold in the winters, and people found out very quick that you couldn't grow crops in that area. Okay, but what they did find out that they could grow or raise cattle, so that's what they did. So Limousin cattle, they spend a lot of their time outside. Actually, all their time outside. They'd eat outside. They'd calve outside, and the producers they took pride in knowing that their cattle could survive the elements when some other cattle breeds couldn't. And the lack of natural resources in this area helped Limousin producers develop the breed without any outside genetic interference. Now I'll explain that. Okay. So you think about all the human civilizations out there, and the one thing that brings people together is resources. Okay, you look at the United States, for instance. You have coal in some of the states. California has gold. You got water. You got land. So people would go to the United States for the resources. Now, if there's no resources, right? There's going to be no interference. Yep. Okay. So if there's nothing for people to go to get, gold or land or things like that, people aren't going to come there. And if there's no resources, there's no interference. Okay? And initially, Limousin cattle were used as work animals, kind of like ox back in the day. They'd be used as work animals, and then when they got old and couldn't work, then they'd use them for their meat. Okay, refining the breed. So natural selection was the thing that producers used back then to get the best Limousin cattle, to improve the breed. Basically, natural selection basically means the strongest survived, right? They tried to do some crossbreeding with some ox, but it did not work out very good. So they just solely used natural selection. So in the 1850s, Limousin cattle made a big impression in French cattle shows. Okay, and you might be thinking, cattle shows? Why would people go to cattle shows? Well, I'll explain that. So today we have social media, we have TV, we have radio, okay? And we got other stuff, but these are the main three, okay? For communication, for spreading the word. Well, back then, there's none of that. There's nothing. So the only way for cattle breeds, to show off what they had. And I, again, apologize for my drawings. They're not that great. What cattle breeds had was cattle shows. Okay? And people would come from all around to see these shows, to see what a breed was about. And Limousin cattle, when they went to these shows, they would beat out other breeds in some of the first carcass competitions that were held. And between winning those carcass shows and the actual shows, they were able to grow and establish the reputation of the Limousin breed being a meat breed, meat animals. And even today, in France, there's still people that call Limousin the butcher's animal, just because of how well they are able to produce meat. And so, by using natural selection, producers found out really quick that they needed to, it was important to record the bloodlines of where those animals came from, okay? Because otherwise, they could remember which bull and which cow made this calf for 1 year, but you think doing that for 10 plus years, you're gonna, on multiple head of cattle, you're gonna soon forget. You're gonna forget where this calf came from, tracing it back. So, they found out they needed to record those bloodlines for the really good heifers and bulls that way. So in November of 1886, the first Limousin herd book was established. And a herd book, if you guys can remember, a herd book, oops, spelled with a K, it's kind of like a map. Okay? So, it was a map for the producers, because then they could tell where the calf came from by looking back at its at the bloodlines that way. But then for people buying it, it also helped them to have a map to know, okay, this calf came from this cow, which came from this bull, this cow, all the way back up. And Louis Michel, he presided over the herd book, and his main goal was to make sure that the breed was uniform, that the Limousin breed was uniform in all aspects. Okay, and that was important too, because you didn't want one herd in one part of France to look different than another herd in another part of France. You wanted all Limousin to look the same and have the same genetics, within the same parameters that way. And Michel, and there were 11 other commissioners that he worked with. They were very strict with who they let in to the herd book, which cattle they let in to be part of the herd book. And just to give you guys some reference, out of 1,800 animals presented for registration, and these were cattle out of hundreds of different farms throughout France, only 674 animals were allowed in. Okay, now 1,800 divided by 674, is about 40% acceptance. Okay, that's really low. I looked this up, actually. College acceptance is actually at 67%. So really, theoretically, you have a better chance of going to college. Back then, you had a better chance of getting into college than you did getting some of your cattle into the herd book. Crazy. So the herd book was also used by the French government to make shows that were entirely and exclusively Limousin cattle. And like I mentioned before, those shows were really important back then for bringing in people, getting a lot of people to see what Limousin had to offer. And by July of 1914, the animals registered in the herd book reached a little over 5,000, about 5,416, which is quite a bit, considering only 674 were allowed the first time, or in the beginning. And the herd book has been reorganized twice since it was founded. Once was in 1923, and the second time was in 1937. Now, these reorganizations, I'll explain this. Reorganized them because they needed to redefine the characteristics of the breed. Okay, and I'll explain this. So, let's say you can think of reorganization as getting a new size of pants. Okay, so in middle school, you wore a certain size of pants. Okay, I don't know what I wore, but they were smaller pants. Okay, now by the time I got to high school, I was wearing bigger pants. Okay, now I could have kept wearing these pants from middle school all the way up to high school. I could have, but they would have been very small. It would not have worked. It's the same deal with the reorganization. The Limousin breed, it's continually changing, and it was back then, and it still is today, but it was back then. It was continually changing, evolving, just like I was from middle school. Okay, and yeah, the Limousin breed could have kept the same guidelines and parameters of who they allowed into the herd book through time, but just like I wouldn't be able to fit into my middle school pants, a lot of this cattle probably wouldn't have fit into those old parameters. So the reorganization period was very important. And through the late 1800s into the early 1900s, Limousin breeders, they paid really close attention to some physical characteristics as the breed developed, just to make sure that if through everything else, these were the things that needed to stay. The first trait they paid really close attention to, the medium size of the cattle was a good breed trait. Okay, now you can think of it as like the Three Bears, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Okay. So on this side, and instead of hot, cold, and perfect, we're gonna have big, small, and perfect. Okay. So you go on this side. You didn't want super big cows, because big cows, big bulls usually lead to big calves, and you don't want a cow having a big calf because, well, first of all, it's really hard on the cow because if they're trying to have a really big calf, it's just really hard on a cow. Second of all, when you go to feed it, big cattle eat more. It's pretty straightforward. The big cattle tend to eat a lot more, so you're going to spend a lot more money on feed. So you don't want big cattle, okay? But then if you go over to the next extreme, you don't want small cattle either. Now, yes, they won't eat as much, but then you got to think, when you go to sell them, they're sold on weight, okay? And if you have a small weighted calf or cow, steer, you're not going to get as much per pound, okay? But the Limousin breed, they were pretty spot on right in the middle. So they didn't want to change that. They wanted to make sure that they had cattle that were big enough to make to make be the most efficient at eating and putting on weight and eventually making the most money per pound. But they also didn't want to have too small of cattle to not make as much money. So that was important, was size. Okay, the next thing, they also selected for the golden red hide with the wheat underbelly. And this was more to distinguish Limousin cattle from other breeds cattle. Okay, just like today, you got Angus. First thing you think of is their black hide, or at least I do. Same thing was for back then. You just wanted the breed to look uniform throughout, have the same colors. So they wanted that kind of that reddish, dark red, with the wheat underbelly. That was just a distinguishing color for Limousin cattle. Next thing, French records also showed a lot of emphasis being put on Limousin having a deep chest, a strong top line, well-placed tailhead, and strongly muscled hindquarters. So here I've attempted to draw a cow. So a strong chest usually just means it's healthy. Okay, it's like people, kind of. You see a really big-chested like bodybuilder, they look strong and healthy, compared to someone that's kind of small and frail. They're gonna have a smaller chest, so it's more of a health indicator, if anything. So that was a big chest, a strong top line. That's right, the top line is their back, and a well-placed tailhead right here. That's kind of where their tail and their back meet. And strongly muscled hindquarters. That's their back rump muscle. Now, the top line and the tailhead, that was more to see if they had good structure. Okay, it was really it was back then and it still is today a really important trait to have for cattle, because a well structured cow or bull, they last longer. Okay, because they're not trying to overcompensate for something. They don't have a limp. I don't know how I want to explain it. It's like having a car with a flat tire. Okay, if your car ran all the time with one flat tire, the tire's going to wear out quick. Okay, but then it's also going to affect the other tires because they're now in a different angle, so they're going to wear out quicker, and your bumper might hit the ground, so it's going to knock the bumper out, and the car's not going to last as long. Okay, whereas if you had a car with all four tires nice and round all the time, all the parts are going to work well, the tires are going to wear evenly, nothing's going to get broken because of the tires, and kind of same with cattle. So the top line and tailhead were good. They were indicators for structure. So that's what producers looked for, because a good structured animal is going to last a lot longer. And the hindquarter, that was a good indicator for producing meat. Okay, and it kind of correlates with the chest. A animal with a really big hindquarter, they're going to produce a lot of meat. Okay, it's simple as that. An animal with little to no hindquarter, they're not going to have a lot of meat on them, and yeah, they're just not going to produce very good quality of meat or a lot of meat. So the combination of those three characteristics, the final result was a efficient animal, efficient breed. They were hardy, adaptable, and most importantly, they were well suited for carrying out their one big purpose, which was to produce meat. Okay, so now that you know a little bit about breed history, we're going to dive in to Limousin coming across the pond. So, the first Limousin came across the pond, came to North America in November of 1968, and the animal that came over was Prince Pompadour. Now, you can think of Prince Pompadour being like Caitlin Clark of the Limousin world at the time, okay? Caitlin Clark is one of the top basketball athletes out there. Prince Pompadour is one of the top Limousin bulls out there. Caitlin Clark is next level. Prince Pompadour, next level. So, Prince Pompadour was imported to Canada in, like I said, November 1968. He was from the highly respected Pompadour estate of France. They were known for producing some really, really high quality cattle. He was later brought into the United States, where he was part of Limousin exhibitions at different cattle shows, and it helped draw attention to the breed. So he was brought in. People would come from all around to see this bull, just like people from all around go to watch Caitlin Clark play. And Prince Pompadour kind of got the ball rolling in Canada, because after he was imported, there was multiple more bulls that ended up getting imported from France to Canada. And this happened in 1969. So 1 year after Prince Pompadour came, then more bulls followed. So, U.S. importation. So in 1971, so this was 3 years after Prince Pompadour came to Canada, the first Limousin bull was imported into the United States. So before, the Canadian government didn't allow any Limousin cattle to leave the country, except for the exhibition shows or for short periods of time. And this was because around that time, France was dealing with a hoof and mouth disease. Canada definitely didn't want to bring a diseased Limousin cow from France into their own country, but they especially didn't want to have any infected cattle from Canada travel elsewhere. So they were really strict with importing and exporting cattle. I think there was like a 3-month quarantine from even getting the cattle from France to Canada before Canada would even let producers take them home. They had to wait 3 months to make sure they didn't show any signs. So it was a very strict deal. But finally, Canada allowed to export some Limousin cattle. The first U.S. import was named Kansas Colonel. He was born and raised in Canada, and then he was imported by Bob Hagg of Kansas, Topeka, Kansas. And he was used by a group of Limousin producers. And really, after that first importation, the rest is history. Limousin breeds grown from there. There was the North American Limousin Association that formed, a lot of other state associations. I could go into that today, but I'm going to save that for another video. So again, guys, I think that wraps it up. I should have wrote something up there to go with the title, but I didn't. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I had fun learning about this. It was really interesting to me. I've been around Limousin all my life, but to really go in depth of the history, it was fun. I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys did too. If you guys like this video, make sure to subscribe and like this video. If you have any questions or comments, you can comment down below, or you can send me an email. I'll have that down in the description. Other than that, I think that's it. Yeah, I hope you guys really like this video. I had fun making it. So until next time.